Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin. I'm your host and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers are members of various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction or affliction. Here we launch into 2025 with Father Bill W. being our first speaker of the year, and I'm really grateful and excited for this. Today is meeting number 305 of the Rico 12 speaker meeting, and today's speaker, as I mentioned, is Father Bill W., a Rico 12 veteran. His topic today will be spiritual sobriety, and I look forward to hearing that message here in just a few minutes. But first, for a little bit of business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, just hang out and grow with us. You can check out the other podcasts and you can find those at reco12.com. That's RECO12.com. And to join in our social communities, you can also check out links and information that I will put in the chat of this live meeting and in the show notes of the podcast. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thank you to all of our spearheads, past, present, and future, and a special thanks this week to Nicole, Marianne, Stacy, Abigail, and Ferdinand. Thank you all for these generous donations. If you out there also feel the desire to become a spearhead and support this cause, visit reco12.com/support or click the links that I will put in the chat here of the meeting and in the show notes of the podcast for one-time or monthly donation options. Your support, not just financially, but with your word of mouth, makes a difference in keeping us able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today, Father Bill W., and give a little background on him. Father Bill W. is a recovered alcoholic who just celebrated this last year 52 years, I think it is, in recovery. And he is an Episcopal priest in Austin, Texas, who has worked in the addiction treatment field for over 50 years. Bill presents workshops and hosts the Father Bill W. podcast and speaks frequently on AA's spiritual history and on two-way prayer. He is, in fact, the steward of the twowayprayer.org website, and he will address us this week on the topic of spiritual sobriety. Father Bill, take it away. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Justin. It's good to be back with you and your group. And your group has grown. This is wonderful to see this. And I'm going to ask you guys to do your part and come up with some questions. So I want to speak a little bit less than maybe the time allotted, so we have time to visit on this subject. I'd rather kind of introduce it more broadly, and then we can flesh it out in the chats. I don't know exactly where it came from. I think it was from A New Pair of Glasses by Chuck Chamberlain, where the statement is made, there is one problem and there is one solution. And as my time in recovery has grown, I'm more and more convinced that that's the truth. Justin and I were talking about what topic am I going to stumble and bumble onto, and he said he had heard me on a radio show where I talked about the importance of spirituality over and above emotional sobriety. In other words, there's emotional sobriety, and that's really important, that we understand what's going on inside of us, not just externally, but our inner world. And I spent a lot of time and read a lot of stuff to help me understand that. And it's important. It's really important. But there's something that's more important. And that is the connection the joining. So let me go back and I'm not going to tell my story, but this separation happened to me at a very young age. I grew up in an alcoholic family, and the healthiest thing to do was get the hell out of there. But when you're five, you can't just pack your bags and off you go. I did try that a few times, but but I escaped inside. I went inside me. And the studies they've done on trauma say that, well, that's exactly what people who are exposed to serious trauma do. You check out, you separate. So I separated at a very deep level. I wasn't me, and I wasn't able to be in genuine relationship with you because I wasn't me. Who you met was phony. All right. Who you met was not real. Looked real, and I wasn't aware of any of this sort of stuff. And then addictions come in. Mine started with food. That was the first one, and then the cigarettes, and then the alcohol, and then the drugs, and religion is another one that I could hide behind. You see, and then I came into recovery and got sober, and I don't want to tell my story. I went 20 years doing what I might call traditional AA, you know, doing the meetings, doing the steps, doing them over, having the sponsors. And then I came across a guy in Oklahoma City, Earl Husband was his name, an AA archivist. And he introduced me to original AA, let's call it, the Oxford group connection to the fellowship, to the program where it originated. And I left his home. I spent about 3 hours with him one night and left his home with a stack of books and things. Um, and uh, and it changed me. It changed me. And it changed very specifically the spirituality piece that I was doing. I two things that we left behind from our origins in the Oxford group were two-way prayer. And the second were the four absolutes: honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. Bill Wilson didn't want the Oxford group he didn't want AA to be associated in the mind of the general public with the Oxford group. He wanted it to be separate. Bill was into separation too. So he went that route, and it was probably a wise thing to do. But these two things changed my life. A form of prayer that that did what? That what was in two directions. And if you're going in two directions, you're going to be introduced to relationship. Okay, relationship. So it's not just one-way prayer out to God. Uh, it's also God coming into me. And that is a profound relationship. All right. And what I have not discovered, uh, become aware of, I guess that's discovered, become more and more aware of, is that the emotional state of my soul, my inner being, is exactly dependent on the status of that relationship. All right. Is there an inflow from God to me? And then is there an outflow from me, not only to God, but to you. And if the flow is happening, life is good. I may lose my job. I may have family members in trouble. I may be undergoing health things, but it's okay. Why? Because the major connection is okay. It's not just a little tag along. It's everything. It's consciousness. It's connectedness. It's joining. It's joining. So uh, I want to. There was a wonderful woman in Australia, Jean Brown. I did a couple of podcasts with her. She was 50 some odd years in the, or more than that, I think, in the Oxford group. And a very, very humble, simple program. One of the things Dr. Bob said to Wilson was what? Keep this thing simple. Don't complicate it with a lot of Freudian stuff. And I can complicate it with a lot of Jungian stuff too. Go down any number of paths. So keep it simple. And in its simplest form, she gave me three words that I am so grateful for. She didn't know too much about the 12 steps. She didn't know too much about AA. She was third generation Oxford group herself. Um, Worked in the medical field, I think it was, serving the poor and carrying the message and going where God guided her. Um, and she did a little pamphlet, and there were three words in it. And when I read those words, it stopped me cold because what I saw present in those words, just like the separation and the joining, I mean, nothing's more simple than that. And in step 10, that's what we're asked to do. Continue to take personal inventory. And when we're wrong, when we're not joined, you know, we got to do something about that. We got to do something about that. So the three words, when I read them, I saw the 12 steps. Maybe no one else could see them there, but boom, they jumped out at me like an explosion. And the three words were connection, and perhaps that was because I was so separated that word was profound for me. Connection, correction, direction. Three words. And there were the steps. She didn't say that, but I could see them. Connection, steps 1, 2, 3. I am separated emotionally and spiritually. I am separated from life. I am separated from God. I'm separated from you. I am separated from my true self. We know loneliness as few people do. That's what the big book says, huh? We are alone. We are cut off. All right. That's one. You know, step one sucks. That's my analysis of step one. If it doesn't suck, you ain't felt step one. But if it sucks badly enough, it propels you into two. That's the good thing about it. Can't believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us, and this is an important word, to sanity. Because in step one, the given is we are insane. We are not in our right minds. All right. And that's the change. That's the joining that has to happen. So two, we meet people, and maybe this thing is going to work for me. I will at least give it a shot, and that's all you need for two. I wasted years on step two. You know, if you spend more than a couple of minutes on the step, uh, you're misguided. It's just a question. Is there a power greater than yourself that could restore you to sanity? And then three, you make a decision. You join to the level you're capable of doing, you know? And it's a one-time act. Boy, there was a mistake that I made uh, initially in my program. I mean, for 20 years, I was trying to do step three every day. And this guy said, no, 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 no. Keep it simple. You do it once. All of the action is in 10, 11, and 12. You're going to repeat all of the things that are present in the first nine steps. They're all contained in 10, 11, and 12. And you're going to go deeper as you work on those. They told me that was just sort of maintenance, like getting your oil changed. Nonsense. That's where the action is. So do it one time, and do it in the presence of another person, and it can be profound. And I did it. At 20 years sober, I was in this guy's living room. He says, "Do it on your knees." Oh, seems rather extreme, but what the hell, I'm in Oklahoma City. Nobody's going to see what I'm doing here. So I got on my knees and I did it, and boom, 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 boom. I started to feel something. Well, what did I feel? I felt joining. I felt connection. You know, and the more separated you are, this is the good news. The more you're going to feel this when it comes. That's the benefit of the pain. So connection, one, two, three. Now, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, I saw those as correction. What's wrong with my connection? Okay, let's dig in and remove the blockages. That was an expression of the Oxford group people. Bookman had an expression. He said he worked with constipated Christians. It's a lovely phrase. I like that. You know, and his job was to remove the blockages. Spiritual X-lax. Let's clear this thing out of what? Of all the crap that is in the way of my connection. You see how simple this is? So you look at what is the crap, what is the stuff that's separating. 5, you share that with God, with yourself, with another human being. 6 and 7, Wilson said that's where he put the 4 absolutes. That this thing is going to be everything, not just my drinking or my drugging or my food or my sex addiction or whatever. It's not just that stuff. It's everything that gets in the way of my relationship with you, and everything that gets in the way of my relationship with God, and everything that gets in the way of my relationship with myself. It's relational. It's relational. And I share that. And then 6 and 7, what? We have that removed. And does it get removed? My experience is it does get removed. It gets removed completely, wholly, instantly at that moment. And then, whoosh, if I so choose, I take it all back. And this becomes really important. What happened to my connection, to my relationship, to the strength of my spiritual union with God, with others, with true self? What happened to it? 8 and 9, of course, we make amends. So there's the correction phase. And again, you do it once. Clean up as much as you can, and then start living This is what the guy told me in 10, 11, and 12. And so what happens now? Continue to, well, this is direction, connection, correction. And this is the part that 12 steps completely miss. Direction. Nobody told me about this. Nobody said you're going to live a guided life. You're going to receive communication from the divine that gives you your instructions for the day, that gives you instructions for your life. That was the promise, that God has a plan for our lives. Our job is to keep the channel clear enough so that we can hear what the plan is, and then keep ourselves willing enough to perform the plan. So 10 is watch. 10 is watch. One word, watch. Watch yourself. Watch your connection. Watch your emotions. All right. Now, one of the pioneers said something I thought it was brilliant. He said, if you don't watch, you don't know what the hell to pray for. 10 flows into 11. You don't just sit down and pray. You sit down and watch. And then once you've watched, and as you see some more blockages coming in or having accumulated, then you know what the hell to pray for. Then you know what to pray for. And there's a letting go. And as I let go, I create room inside of self for God to come in. And the relationship is renewed. So I watch 10, I pray 11, and in 12 I act. I've received guidance on what to do. And so I go and do it, or I don't. And you will be quite surprised how often perhaps you don't. You received guidance, you wrote it down in your book, and did you do it? Well, no. Well, what the hell do you expect? And they were very logical people. They said, you can expect the communication to dry up. Why? Because I'm not listening. Because I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm not acting. I'm not rightly related. All right? I haven't joined with. Haven't joined with. So, I mean, there's the deal. Now we can work on your emotions. I've done a number of podcasts with some people on the emotional stuff, and it's all very good, and I think it's very helpful, and we need to know what's going on in there, helpful, but not enough, not enough. And why is it not enough? Because I'm not the self that is trying to be emotionally mature and all of that sort of stuff. If it's not the spiritual self, if it's not the greater self, if it's not the true self, it just becomes another ego trip. I'll become healthier than you. I'll be more emotionally mature than you are. No, I got to become less selfish, less self-centered, less Thomas Merton was asked, did he believe in heaven? I liked his answer. He said, well, yes, I do, but I don't think there'll be much of me there. So now that's the letting go. That's the letting go. We cling. We cling. We cling to everything. And if you're really doing your 10, 11, and 12, you're coming to new levels of letting go. And the more room I make within myself for the divine, was it Thomas Kelly, the Quaker mystic, had an expression for God. He called it the beyond that is within. The beyond that is within. I thought that was beautiful. And the big book says what? The great reality is within. You know? He just said it in a different way, the beyond that is within. But the more that beyond, the more that absolute love, absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, the more of that that can take hold of my life, the more peace I'm going to have within me and then ultimately within the world. The Oxford Group people were out to change the world. Now, how do you change the world? One life at a time. It's the only way you're ever going to change the world. You know, I had tried to change the world. I was very big on changing the world. The world sucked. I knew that, So I joined the Peace Corps. I worked with orphan kids in the Bronx. I was always out to change the world. But I didn't change myself. You know, that's where the change has to come. And then if that change comes there, then you will be guided as to how, where you're going to change your little corner of the world. And that's where it starts. And it's the only way it works. You know, the world is a mess. It's true. And we're starting a new year, and we are not in good shape as a world. Well, look at my world. And what can I do about that? And then it's the ripples in the pond. You know, you ask for guidance. What's your job to do in this world? You know, and that goes beyond, the AA 12 step. We have no opinion on outside issues. Well, and I think that's quite appropriate for AA, NACA, all the A's to have no opinion on outside issues. But it doesn't mean we can't have an opinion on outside issues. It doesn't mean we can't be called to do something different. You know, and to me, that's what the spiritual joining is all about. I think the program gives us that guidance factor that we've lost in terms of how do you find out, and then do you do it? Then do you do it? So connection, correction, direction. Look at all the separation you got in your life. Look at the joining that has to happen. I think Dr. Bob would be very happy with that approach. Keep it simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Bill. I've got a ton of notes here. I've written down several questions. To our live audience, if you have questions for Father Bill W., please post them in the chat. If you'd like to remain anonymous, in other words, if you don't want me to read your first name when I read your question, send me a direct message in the chat, and I will take care of it anonymously at that point. But Father Bill, I'd like to start off with a question that I wrote down here. You talked a lot about identifying blockages that keep me from that connection, from the source, from the power. What is maybe a recent blockage that you've become aware of in your own life that you've addressed or are in the process of addressing?
Oh, watching the news. Watching the news. I've cut out the news. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're finding a lot more peace in cutting that out, huh?
Not yet, but I'm on my way.
You're on your way. I love that. Thank you for that honest answer. Okay.
But
Next
I mean,
question. Oh, go
you
ahead.
know it. You know it when you look at your life and you look for the flow. You know what's getting in the way of it. You know, and it can be the smallest things. Doesn't have
Yeah,
to be a huge thing.
it's that watch principle.
It's
If
the
I
watch.
find where
It's the
I'm
watch.
disturbed,
Yeah, the greatest thing, Star Wars, is there a disturbance in the Force? You watch for the disturbance.
yeah. Great, great, good stuff. All right. First question from our live audience comes from Thomas. And Thomas says, "Thank you, Father Bill W. I benefit from your message immensely today. Recently, I have struggled with anger towards God because of my never-ending problems. My wife's serious health issues topping the list. Definitely feeling, quote, not sober with regards to my spirituality and my ability to trust in God. Will you share if you have ever been angry at God and what helped you dissolve that?"
Oh, sure, all the time, all the time. It's one of those blockages. It's where I assume divine powers and abilities in myself. If only you would run the universe the way I want you to run it, everything would be fine. Well, I fall into that trap all the time. This is the way it should be. There should not be death. There should not be pain. There should not be suffering. And I went through a long, long period, you know, of separation from God, you know, and it was, I mean, what, I didn't understand it. I didn't even say it out loud, but underneath, that's what was going on. I can't trust you. I can't trust you. So why will trust me? And it
Yeah.
sets me up. One of my favorite books is the Book of Job. And Edward Edinger wrote a beautiful book, a Jungian analyst, on the answer to Job. And Job has a wonderful line in it. And I can't tell you how often I've meditated on this. And it's Job 13:15. I'm not a big scripture quoter. This one I tried to remember. Chapter 13. Oh, yeah, chapter 13, 15, somewhere in there. What he writes is this: though you slay me, yet will I put my trust in you. Now, you want to meditate on something. I'm being slain. It feels like I'm being slain. Well, yes, you are. It does feel that way because, in many ways, that's what's happening. You know, the American dream is, God, if I do everything right, you know, the I should have everything flow into my life perfectly. It should be nice and smooth. Well, I know a lot of people who are damn good people, and they get a lot of pain, a lot of pain. And that ain't because they've done something. That was the whole thing of Job. You know, his advisors come along and say, well, you must have screwed up somewhere along the line. That's why this crap's happening to you. And Job stayed with. He said, no, I haven't. I haven't screwed up. You know, stuff happens. And it happens to good people. You know,
Yeah, thank you
where,
for sharing that. Did you have something else
well,
on that?
no, just,
Sorry.
and where is God in that? In the pain, with us in the pain. You know, that's the presence.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's a question that I've had. And I remember, I think, Father Bill, it was you that first gave me permission to get angry at God.
Mm.
Um, that was something that I was just fearful of expressing to God my anger, my frustration with God that,
Yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
aren't the way I want them. And when I voiced that, and at the end of just ripping God up one side and down the other, saying, "Do you still love me?" and feeling that was a game changer in my life.
Oh,
Any other
yeah.
thoughts on that?
No, it's a wonderful exercise. But then you got to listen. Then you have to listen to the voice, and then you have to write it down. You know?
No, this is good. All right, we've got a lot more questions that have come in. I'm going to get to these one at a time, and we'll hit as many as we can. I'm going to jump to one of these questions from Deborah. Deborah says, "How on earth do I keep being ready to hand over my defects and then doing it, and all this without being hard on myself? It's a struggle. What's your feedback on that from
Read that one more time. How do I?
how do I keep being ready to hand over my defects of character and then actually doing it?"
Well, all right. I'm going to quote Richard Rohr on this one. Two things powerful enough to change a person: pain and prayer. So if you hang on to your defects, pain is going to increase. If you genuinely do your prayer right, you're going to be watchful, you're going to see it, and you're going to let go of it. And if you don't do it through prayer, come back in a few weeks and the pain will increase.
Yeah, I've experienced that big time in my life.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. All right. Next question comes in from an anonymous attendee here. This person says, "I've practiced two-way prayer in meetings and with others and on my own. How can I know the direction and messages are coming from God and not just myself?" This is a pretty common question, but let's dive here.
Yeah, you don't. You, you don't know. You don't know. So you have to put it to the test. Is it honest? Is it pure? Is it unselfish? Is it loving? And Dr. Bob said, if it meets those criteria, the answer can't be very far from the truth. Can't be very far. The big book says what on the guidance? You know, we may do some foolish things when you first start this because we're new at it. All right. So my advice is if the if the guidance is take out the garbage, well then take out the garbage. But you're gonna and then you go say, well, is that really coming from God? You know, don't bother asking. It's honest, pure as it passes that test. I don't like taking out the garbage. Passes that test. That's kind of good. So I do it. And when I do it, I am doing it feeling, this is so important, feeling connected to God in taking out the garbage. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
God is even in the taking out of the trash, huh?
In the simplest of things, am I doing it joined or am I staying there in separation? Hello, Barbara. Good to see you. My friend in Florida. Good.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I've got several questions that have come in uh, around this topic of two-way prayer meetings. What is your take on two-way prayer meetings, and how would you suggest people find a good meeting or create the fellowship they crave maybe?
Well, I'm going to get into trouble with this answer, but that's me. Um, I don't recommend meetings highly. All right. I think this is an individual practice. As soon as an alcoholic hears something new, he says, well, where's the meeting on this? You know, we are so accustomed to going to meetings. Now, my advice to people is you do this individually, you do it privately, you do it first thing in the morning, you know, and you don't share it. Now, after you've done that for a while, after you've established your practice, now I did that for 10 years. I never shared it with anybody, you know, 10 years, Then a guy called me and I started sharing it with him and taught him how to do it. And we shared. And then I've experimented with doing groups. Justin, I know you came to that group some years ago. Uh, I don't think you're going to go out there and find a wonderful group. I think you can start a wonderful group, with 6 or 8 people, perhaps. But this is intimate work, you know? And if I'm just going to jump on a Zoom thing and share my guts, I don't know who the hell's out there listening. You can really get hurt. And people can really get dominating and controlling. And they will explode. They will self-explode. You know, I'm not a great believer in them.
Okay.
So, but I am a believer in the power of groups. But they need to be small. They need to be intimate. They need to be people attend them regularly. Not that I'm just going to drop in on a group. No, you're not going to drop in a group. You're going to join a group. You're going to be part of a group, or you're going to miss the whole experience of a group. Groups are powerful, but there are certain rules that make them so, not just in and of themselves.
That's important, powerful things. Thank you for sharing that, Father Bill. All right, this next question kind of jumps a little bit, but I think it's important. This is from another anonymous attendee, and this person says, "Can you talk more about addiction to religion and how it manifests, maybe in your life or somebody's life?"
Yeah, well, very, very similarly, if you just kind of catch the flow concept, you know, is the love flowing? Or has religion stepped in and said, well, it's only flowing to us. It ain't flowing to them. You know, look out. Somebody said the only thing more dangerous than religion is no religion. I love that expression, that saying. It's true. It's true. I think religion is very helpful. It gives order, stability, depth, historical connection. But if I'm running around saying, we got it and you ain't, then you're on shaky grounds. And then you got the Sunnis and the Shias and the Crusades, and you got everybody killing everybody in the name of God, and that's dangerous. That is dangerous. But is no religion dangerous? Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, I mean, to find right religion, and that's as hard as to find a right meeting. It's almost as hard, you know? For me, it was the mystics. The mystics get it. But the people in heavy duty religion don't like the mystics because they can't control them. And a lot of religion is about control. So it's dangerous, but it's dangerous to be without it.
No, that's some powerful insights. Thank you. All right, next question here. I'm going to kind of edit the question a little bit to make it a fresh question. Um, this person says, "My sponsor told me to imagine God as my loving parent.
Nice.
I don't even know what that looks like." The person says, "What does a
Yeah.
loving person look like? How do I deal with a situation where maybe I don't have anything that models a loving parent?"
Well, then what is a loving image? What is a loving image? I work with a Jewish woman. She writes some of the most beautiful two-way prayers I've ever heard. So she was in that group, and I've kind of stayed in touch with her. She climbs into God's lap. She doesn't pay much attention to the face or the. It's the lap. It's. I'm being held. Where are you being held? What image can you get that supports you? Fully, wholly, you, just as you are. Is there an image for that? God our Father. Try saying God my mother. if your father's image, my father image was terrible, but yet that's what we've been given, God is like a loving father. I had the nuns in school, and they were trying to explain God to me. Well, he's like your father. And I said, oh, shit. And I was only 6. I'm in trouble. and I separated a little bit more, you know? So what's your image of love? What's your image of honest? What's your image of truth? But love is the big one. Can you turn your life and your will over to the care of love? Can you seek to improve conscious contact with love? That's God is love. God is love. The images are wrong. Let's be we project onto God our human stuff. What one fellow said, if frogs believed in God, you can be quite sure God is green. I mean, that's what we do that's what all our minds are capable of, is projecting images that we know. Is God truly my father? No. But is that image helpful? It can be. It can be. If it's not helpful, put it aside.
Hmm.
I wish the program had said in the set, God is we don't understand God, because the truth is nobody does. But you can experience God. And how do you experience it? When that love comes through to you, when that honesty comes through to you, and when it comes through purely, then you're in the presence of the divine. And can you understand it? No. But can you experience it? Yes. Yes, you can. And can you lose it? In a heartbeat.
Uh, Man, thank you. And we've got a ton of questions here. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. So I'm going to copy these questions. I'll put them in the Rico 12 WhatsApp group. I'll put a link to that here in the chat. So anybody who wants to can join if they aren't already part of that. And we can talk these questions through as a group. But I'm going to continue asking more questions of Father Bill. Next one comes from an anonymous attendee. And this person's asking for some commentary on a quote from the 12 and 12 that says, we have AAs ask with much earnestness and faith for God's explicit guidance. And then quite often, however, the thoughts that seem to come from God are not answers at all. They prove to be well-intentioned conscious rationalizations. So what are your thoughts on that? How do you, I don't know, interpret, or what's your experience with that?
Well, you go carefully. There is no doubt that guidance was the primary. Uh, it was a huge factor in Oxford Group and in early AA. There's no doubt about that. I mean, literature is crystal clear. Did we get away from that? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I mean, I'm 20 years sober. I'm reading about this. I said, nobody ever told me about this guidance stuff. It's not a part of and yet it is. And yet it is. I mean, if you'll also read the big book, and the big book, I would say, let's get a little closer to that than the 12 and 12. By the time the 12 and 12 was written, it had moved a bit. And I don't take Bill Wilson as my guru. He was severely depressed for 10 years. Which was okay. I mean, we try to make him a god too, which is not healthy, and it damn near killed him. Um, but I don't take the 12 and 12 as gospel. I don't take gospel as gospel. I mean, you got to dig around, and you'll find some things in there that have a history to them, let us say. Okay. That is not, let's say, Jesus saying that. It's the community saying that. It's words that were put into the mouth of Jesus. I mean, most historians, people who saved my faith. I mean, there were some people. One of the things that really helped me, I was not a priest when I was, a counselor. Um, when I got a hold of the stuff 30 some odd years ago, the Oxford Group stuff. But one of the things that really grabbed my attention, just like that connection correction, they jumped out at me, was that the name of the Oxford Group originally was a first century Christian fellowship. Boom. That a light went off when I saw that, a first century Christian fellowship. And I went back and I started studying first century Christian scholars and writings and things of that nature. What was going on back then? And I got a very different picture from some of the stuff that I had been raised with, you know, and it was the love that came through. I mean, what the four absolutes that were a part of the Oxford Group's a critical part of it that Dr. Bob loved, that he kept, that he thought well enough of them to be buried next to him. If you ever go to see his grave in Akron, you will see the four absolutes planted right next to him. Honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. Where did those come from? They came from the life of Jesus. I mean, that was their history. Oh, Jesus was honest, he was pure, he was unselfish, he was loving. Keep it
Yeah.
simple.
Keep it simple. Love that. Next question, and I like this question, so I'm excited to hear your take on it. Anonymous from our audience: are all higher power communications benevolent? Is there a danger of hearing the guidance of a bad power into a prayer?
Oh dear. Well, I don't, Jung would say yes. uh, number of church people would say yes too. Are there powers? And um, yes, I think you have to be careful. Discernment of spirits is important. Um, the honesty, purity, unselfish love, that's not the be all and end all. Does it match with other people who are listening to God? Can you be deceived in your stuff? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Um, so one thing I say this. One thing I've been very careful to do is if I have one of those questions that I'm capable of being deceived on, uh, I'll ask it several times over a course of several weeks if I have time, you know? And is it consistently coming through? Or is there a contradictory thing that's coming through? For example, I'll give some big ones from my life. One was getting ordained. One was getting ordained in the Episcopal Church. That was a big decision for me, you know? And my wife, after I kind of started the process, she was not happy with it. She said, well, I didn't marry a priest, you know? And I stopped the process for 6 months because I knew intuitively that it was going to bring peace. And if it's bringing a disturbance, then it's not right. So I went to the powers that be. I said, I'm stopping this process. And it was only about 6 months later when she said, she was okay with it. And her understanding of it and my understanding were very different. Her understanding was like, well, he's going to go get his PhD. That was her understanding of it. And that was fine. She said, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that personal experience. I love that. So before we start wrapping up, Father Bill, are there any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
Forgiveness. And I went out on a few limbs here, so I do tend to sometimes get people who are deeply religious in a maybe a more literal sense than I've been able to come to. I can upset them, and I can do the same with people in 12-step recovery. You know, that probably did that with the 12 and 12. You know, but you know, it's just an opinion. You know, so forgive me for those things, but you can't be too. I don't want to be too careful. I'd rather piss a few people off than just not say what's on my mind. Another quote I had that was very helpful to me. So, it was when I was doing sermons. A guy said to me, an old priest said, "Ask yourself this question before you write the sermon: Do you have something to say, or do you just have to say something?" I've gone back to that over and over again. You know. So anyway, I love the forum here that it's freedom to kind of get it out there. It doesn't mean it's right. It's just been my experience, and but I tell you one thing about my experience is it's kept it alive. It has kept 12-step recovery alive, and not just throwing the book at people. I think we lose a lot of young people who come into AA or NA or CA. It's the same old crap. Well, you know, it's just slogans and jargon and such. And I think if we can teach them that there's a life going on in you, young man or young woman, there's a life and you're meant to be somebody. Now let's talk about who that is. Let's talk about what's blocking you from becoming that, you know? And let's inject life into them and love into them. You know? And that because all the addiction is a blockage to that. You know? So bust it loose.
Love it. Thank you so much, Father Bill, for a fantastic Rico 12 weekly speaker meeting. If we missed your questions out there, and there were a lot that came in, and some of them we weren't able to get to, please consider joining our WhatsApp community. I've put links in the chat to that. Or you can email me at rico12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12POD at gmail.com to join in the conversation. If you haven't already done so, please consider going and rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And by the way, you can listen to this and any of the previous 305 or whatever episodes we've done so far there on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And it is a powerful way to work your step 12 by rating and reviewing it. Next Friday, we're going to be hearing from Cheryl A., who previously spoke to us about, I think, 3 or 4 months ago. But we're excited to hear from her again. Stay tuned in the WhatsApp community on the email list for more information on that. And now let's launch off into the rest of our day with a prayer that Father Bill will say for us, and even into the rest of our year.
Yeah, this is a prayer for the rest of the year. It's from Howard Thurman, an African-American author, scholar, mystic, friend of Martin Luther King. It's called A Prayer for After Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among others, to make music in the heart. Amen.
Amen. That was beautiful. Thank you, Father Bill. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low. But now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.